right, so I decided to come on here as a pre-statement before I share about the book. It's called The Road of Lost Innocence by Somaly Mam. And so my actual discussion is a little bit more, this is like your warning, because there are some things in the book. I'm not going to get graphic in my explanation and description of the book, but I do want to warn you, so you can choose whether to continue watching or not. Now, with that being said, yes, this is, it can be a very difficult book to get through. There are scenes in there and details in there that may or may not be something that you need to read. But with that being said, there is so much hope in this story. There is so much hope behind what Somaly Mam goes through, went through, is going through. And so if you, nothing else, yes, I want the message that I share later on to be something that you take away and can do something with, but I also want you to take away this message of hope that standing up and doing what's right, there is a chance to get out of whatever your situation is. It may not seem that way at the moment, and unfortunately, sometimes people don't get out of situations, or they choose to keep returning to situations, but there needs to be a sharing of those people who do get out of these situations, who fight to do more, to be more. And sometimes it's just a circumstance that happens, a twist of fate, and everything falls into place and things start to improve. And so maybe it's not something that the person is seeking necessarily, even though it's something that they always want. So just, you know, there is a message of hope behind this, and I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you before you got into more detail of the story. Welcome to another book talk. Today we're going to talk about The Road of Lost Innocence by Somaly Mam, and I'm probably saying that wrong, so I sincerely apologize. So with a book talk, I always like to share why I chose a particular book. So this particular book is set in Cambodia. And as a partner with Trades of Hope, my daughter has fallen in love with the country of Cambodia. And so I decided this summer I wanted to read some books that are based in that region and to get to know some history of how Cambodia has become the way it is today. So in Somaly Mam's story, it's the true story of a Cambodian heroine. This one I do not recommend for your children, your youth, your teens to read. This one is more graphic than the other book, the other story that I shared with you that comes from Cambodia. Same time period, but and even a little bit of the same location, but she carries us on past all the things that took place in the 70s. So this is really a true from beginning to now-ish, about 10 years ago, because this book is about 10 years old, a little bit older than 10 years old. This book definitely gets into more serious topics of discussion, things to think about, things that are going on, to brush over it in a way that isn't as graphic. And I still think it's very graphic to even say it this way. But it talks about human trafficking, but very specifically. And so, you know, if you don't want to, I'm not going to get into details of the book. That's not what this is about, but I will warn you, if you choose to read this book, there are lots of rape scenes, because this is what she had to endure in her life, being sold over and over and over again. And then how her life turned around to where she is now rescuing these young girls out of brothels and from human trafficking. And I can't get past the not crying side. It just, if it does not affect you in that way, I have no words. So to get to understand how there are countries that are like this, this is definitely a historical taking personal account of what takes place in these countries. But guess what? It's not just Cambodia. It's not just Thailand. It's not just Vietnam. It's not just over in China. It is a problem that's in our very own backyards. So for my very own backyard, my resource that I would love to send you to is Lighthouse for Life. They have lots of great resources, and they are working day and night, working to educate about human trafficking and what goes on. So I strongly encourage you to check them out. I promise, no matter where you're at watching this, you've probably got some organization that is set up to bring awareness, bring education, and to help bring down this modern day slavery is what it's sometimes called, but with the human trafficking, it is going on in our own backyards. And so to give you some insight into it, this is one of many, many stories. And she's making changes, and you know, she doesn't want to tell her story because it does bring up the pain and the past and the nightmares, but she knows that she needs to tell her story as her sort of like adopted father, sort of, not the one who necessarily sold her into slavery or anything. Let's see if I pull this correctly. You know, he works with teaching some of the girls who are in the school that she has set up now, and he never talks specifically about prostitution with them. He knows their past, he knows why they're there, but he shares with them, what you have learned from experience is worth much more than gold. If you have a house, it may burn down. Any kind of possession can be lost, but your experience is yours forever. Keep it and find a way to use it. And so my message is always, your story is important. And it may not be the story that you want to share, but your story might just save somebody else one day. And that's kind of how she's taken on this mission. She never dreamed that this is what she would be doing with her life, but this is where her heart is. This is where her soul is. And, she does it to save as many girls as she can. There was one more quote, and I was going to share that with you. She shares, when I close my eyes, I see the physical tortures again. I prefer them to the psychological ones, like the fear I felt when I was told my family and my collaborators would be killed. But even so, my eyes close and the blows and kicks are there. Remembering makes me want to die. But you're not allowed to die. You want to disappear, but you can't disappear. So that's just a snippet of how difficult this is for her. And I shared that one because it's not as graphic as some of the others I could have shared. But if you want a chance to get into, I don't even have the words, because nobody really wants to address this, to read this, to have to acknowledge that this is taking place. But it is, and we've got to become knowledgeable so we can fight and overcome and prevent this from our children, from it taking place. She even shares that she doesn't know if Cambodia was like this before the 70s when all hell broke loose, so to speak. She doesn't like to give it as an excuse. Her focus is on educating and saving as many girls as possible. And by sharing her story, it allows people like you and me to get a snippet, a little bird's eye view into what's taking place. And maybe there's something that you and I could do. This is not something that can be fought alone. She shares how they're able to have, win small battles against the smaller brothels, but the more they win, the more bigger and stronger brothels come in, and it's harder to fight those. You've got a corrupt government. You've got, people from the poorest of the poor to, way up here in status, and you're fighting against them, and it's almost a never-ending battle. So the more people who can get involved and work towards awareness and fighting against this, the better off we're going to be. So again, The Road of Lost Innocence by Somaly Mam. you've been warned as far as picking this book up. I do encourage you to read it, but if it's going to take you into a mental state that should not be entered, please, this is not for you. This is not for children. Thank you.